Now to the grooming gang scandal that simply will not go away, and Kemi Badenoch has demanded that the government launches an immediate inquiry into child exploitation in Britain, despite not doing that while the Tories were in power for 14 years. And this comes as Sir Keir Starmer is attacked over his handling of the Oldham grooming gang scandal when he was also head of the Crown Prosecution Service, with Labour blocking an inquiry yesterday into his conduct at the time. Well, earlier on today, I spoke with GB national reporter Charlie Peters, who broke this story about this report, the inquiry being denied by Oldham, about the need for an independent, politically neutral inquiry.
Yeah, well, that's precisely what the survivors in the town are saying. They just don't believe in the council to do the job. And that's why the council made that request directly to the Home Office, with Jess Phillips, of course, as we revealed, saying no. She said she understood the strength of feeling, but she believed it was up to Oldham to do its job. Now, I understand that Oldham Council will now reach out to Telford to try and understand how they did their report and repeat that process. But many survivors concerned that even with this amount of attention, it just won't be right again. Now, that appalling situation you just referred to, Martin, Shabir Ahmed, probably one of the most shocking revelations of the national scandal. That was revealed in a report conducted that looked only at 2011 to 2014. When people say there's already been an Oldham report, 3 years just is not sufficient. There are so many more avenues to explore, so many other travesties that need to be exposed. And frankly, as survivors always tell me when I speak to them in Oldham, they say that there are just more people who need to be held accountable.
Charlie Peters there, been absolutely doing God's work this week. I've got some statements to read out here. Councillor Arooj Shah, she's the leader of Oldham Council, said this: "Since October, we've been working on setting up that independent inquiry, liaising with Oldham survivors and Telford Council, which conducted a similar inquiry. The independent inquiry will build on the findings of the Greater Manchester inquiry into non-recent safeguarding issues in Oldham. We're working closely with survivors and survivors' families to ensure that they don't just have a voice, but will have a central role in developing this inquiry." Well, a protest is now planned for February called the Million Women March, where the aim of bringing people together for a powerful, peaceful stand for the protection of children. I'm delighted to say I can now speak with the organiser of that protest, and that's Nat. Nat, welcome to the show. An absolute delight to have you on the programme. Now, Nat, I know that you're a passionate campaigner on issues around women and children's safeguarding. I know you've been very vocal on the situation down where you are, down in Cornwall, that part of the country, about the huge influx of asylum hotels and women's safety is something you have a huge concern about. Having said that, you know, you're a single mum from Cornwall, you're not a political beast, and yet you feel compelled now to stand up and do something. Tell me that. What was it that's made you finally stand up and be counted in this magnificent way?
Well, it really started off as, I mean, the toothpaste is never going to go back in the tube, is it, after this week especially? It was the horrific, detailed judges summing up of what those poor little girls went through, the actual details, because the media have managed to skirt around these issues by manipulating language a lot. They say a little girl slept with 100 men, or... You know, even the term grooming gang, you know, I have my dog groomed. It's not an onomatopoeia. It doesn't describe the horrific torture and cruelty that goes on. But it's not just the grooming gangs. We had the beautiful little girl, Sarah, that it was 10 years of missed opportunities before she was finally destroyed. Before that was baby P, then it was Victoria Kalimbe. It's just... There's inquest after inquest, inquiry after inquiry, nothing happens. And it can happen because we've seen it happen. When Extinction Rebellion were blocking the roads, the law was changed like that to stop public protest being an inconvenience. As soon as the Southport riots happened, immediately the law was changed so that social media posts were classed as inciting violence. They can do it, they just don't do it. And what we've seen is, we have seen 14 years of Tory failure, but we've also seen 14 years of Labour opposition. And most of these incidences are happening in Labour seats. and our own Prime Minister was the head of the CPS. You know, how many, and also we've seen in the last few months the Hugh Edwards thing, the amount of times that online abuse doesn't even receive a custodial sentence.
Yeah.
You know, these are not victimless crimes. And the worst thing about child abuse is it never ever happens by accident. It's always premeditated. It's always calculated. You don't accidentally download child abuse images. You don't accidentally groom a child. These are premeditated, cruel crimes, and the sentences need to start reflecting that. There needs to be a deterrent. There is no deterrent at the moment. I would rather, and the long-term effect on our country is immeasurable. The drug problems, these are people that are self-medicating. These aren't people that have had good childhoods. And with the drugs comes the crime. And with the crime, you know, getting hold today's children are tomorrow's future. And I think enough is enough. And there's, as with David Ames, when that tragedy happened, the first thing to blame was social media. Now they're blaming Elon Musk for, you know, vocalizing the horrors of it. They have to stop deflecting. This is a hot potato that they all just keep passing to each other. Meanwhile, it continues. It's been going on since the 90s. And if they all just keep passing this hot potato between them and having inquiries and costing the taxpayer millions, we know the answer. So just deal with it. Just change the laws, strengthen the sentencing. After a spate of serious acid attacks in the UK, laws were changed almost overnight. And when do you hardly ever hear of an acid attack now? Strong sentencing matters, and there isn't any. Most people are just walking free at the moment with a suspended sentence. It's worth the risk. If you're a depraved pervert, it's worth the risk half the time. And if, you know, we've got thousands of predator hunters in the country, we shouldn't have that. We should have a centralised police force that are prioritising the welfare of children from sexual predators.
Nat, you know, I'm listening to you here, and I'm feeling such mixed emotions. On the one hand, it's astonishing to hear you speak like this. You're so wonderful and so eloquent, and you're so passionate, and you are ready made for this. I mean, you need to come forward and be something in a movement or something. You really, really do. And I'm also ashamed about what you're saying, because it's true. You know, of what we've allowed to happen in this country, and how everyone has just systemically buried their heads in the sand, and it's a deep, deep stain on our entire country. And I think that's now being picked up internationally. And I wanted to ask you about the march. We don't have an awful lot of time left. You've been compelled to stand up and do a march in London. I know you've never organised anything like this in your life. This is a huge challenge for you. You're an ordinary mum who's just standing up. And I think actually that's what makes it so special. You're not a political beast. You don't have a cause. You're doing this because you believe in the broken children and women of Britain. Tell us about the march, when it might be, and how can people get involved and support you?
Well, I'm starting to get a lot of help. Like you say, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm really calling upon people to help me. But it's on the 17th of February at 12 o'clock, and we're starting at Boadicea, her statue in Westminster. We think that's quite a profound place to start, because obviously her daughters were terribly violated, and she took on London, and her back faces London, where she eventually burnt it to the ground with 120,000 other Britons that were enraged about the violation of her virgin daughters. So we thought that was a quite profound place to start. But people have started to talk about setting up their own ones on the same day around the country. So Cardiff, Scotland, Edinburgh, Northern Ireland. So we really want to get the movement going. And what's wonderful about it, and what's really touched me, is it's across the political spectrum. There's no left and right. Nobody's talking about any of that. Nobody's bringing their agenda on children, and it doesn't matter who the children are or who the matter, whatever their background, whatever their race, whatever their religion. We all have to come together, because that's something that can unite us.
I need to quickly ask you, how do people get involved? Where do they go? What do they do? Is there a Facebook page or anything?
Facebook page called the Million Women March now, or they could just Twitter search Million Women March. There's more and more things cropping up, so the people can come along to the London March or get involved at a local level. But we just want to make it unable to ignore anymore.
Yeah.
We stand together.
Okay, we have to leave it there now. Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure I give that a boost on my social media to try and help you out. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips responded to the council's request. Acknowledging the strength of feeling that a further inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Oldham should be undertaken. In letters to the council executive, Phillips apologised, for delays in responding, but maintained that local authorities should take the lead, saying it is for Oldham Council alone to decide to commission an inquiry into child sexual exploitation locally, rather than for the government to intervene. And she welcomed the council's resolution to continue its work with victims and survivors. I'm sorry for my outburst there. I'm only human. Let's move on.